Prime Minister has introduced this concept of T15. One approach would be everyone continue to pay whatever it is, but if you're T15, then you have to pay more. Then the question becomes, how do you identify the T15? Welcome back to the Are We OK podcast, the podcast that talks about public policies in ways that are relevant to you, the person on the street. Today, Peter is not with us for this podcast recording because he has conjunctivitis. So he doesn't want to go and show up with his eyes red and make you guys wonder what he's been looking at. So we have a special guest with us today to talk about Budget 2025. He is none other than Mr. Lee Heng Gui. Heng Gui, you want to say hi?
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you, Kian Ming, for having me today. I hope that I can share some insight for this 2025 budget.
So Heng Gui and I have known each other for over 10 years already?
Over 10 years.
Over 10 years, ever since I joined politics and I was an MP.
Correct.
And at that time, when we first met, you were at CIMB?
CIMB, yes. I still remember Kian Ming called me one day and read my report about the commentary on budget as well. And then we were discussing on some of the allocation for expenditure.
And before joining CIMB, Heng Gui, you were at Bank Negara for 12 years?
12 years, yes.
Yep.
Yeah. After that, I joined the broking industry. And subsequently, I moved to Hong Leong Bank. And the last posting is CIMB Group. I was there about more than 12 years. After that, I took early retirement. After 3 years of doing nothing, and the chamber finally, asked me, "Hey,
not doing anything lah, taking a well-deserved break."
Okay lah. I mean, to pay back time to my family and my wife. So I took this opportunity and lead the center, and coming up to about 8 years now.
Socio-economic
Research Center.
Yeah.
The reason why they asked me to come, I mean, you can speak Mandarin. The Chinese Chamber, all the members, they converse
this
in
the
Mandarin.
Associated
ACCIM.
Chinese Chamber of Commerce in Malaysia.
Industry of Malaysia. Yes, this is one of the oldest. It's about 103 years old now. So I lead a very small team. Myself and another 3 analysts. So it's a very small budget team. Outfit. I think our principal responsibility is to look into issues, economic industry, and to fight for what is good for the country. We are more like inclusive. Malaysia is not just for Chinese community. So whatever we propose to government is for the whole country.
So I think the way we're going to divide our discussion, because the budget is actually a very complicated and also very comprehensive document, we're going to talk about the budget in 5 areas. The first topic we're going to talk about is the fiscal position of the government, as well as some top line numbers with regards to the Malaysia's GDP and also other macroeconomic indicators. Then the second area we're going to go into with regards to some of the progressive policies that have been announced under Budget 2025 to see how they may or may not be so effective in helping the non-T15 category. And we'll go into explaining what T15 means. And then the third topics is with regards to measures to stimulate the economy and also guide investments and also economic activity, including in the area of green investments. So we're going to talk about how different measures are going to stimulate different sectors of the economy. And then the fourth topic would be on the impact of the budget on business. We're talking about the large listed companies as well as the SMEs. And then finally, we'll end off with a wish list. I'll ask Heng Gui to share what he thinks should have been in the budget but was not. I will also share my thoughts on that. So with that, first topic, government fiscal position, macroeconomic position and policies. So generally speaking, the numbers are quite good, Heng Gui. GDP projections are good for this year. World Bank has revised it upwards to 4.9%. Next year, Bank Negara and the government is projecting 4.5 to 5.5% growth, which is pretty high even by, I think, Southeast Asian standards. Budget deficit projected to go down to 4.3% this year and then 3.8% next year. And then government revenue is also quite healthy. Total trade also expected to grow in 2025. So what is your sort of like your take in terms of some of these top line numbers?
Okay, I think for start, I look at all the macro numbers are quite in line with our SCRC forecast. I think we're also seeing continued sustained growth, GDP for next year. Our numbers is about 5% for next year. And this year we are looking about 5.4. Is at the higher end of the range forecast. But if you look at the Ministry of Finance numbers, even though they give a range, it's a point estimates. This year is 4.9, next year is 4.8. So it's a bit
in the middle.
In the middle.
Yeah.
So I think basically they are the key driver of the whole the forecast is mainly continued demand strength. I mean, coming from not just the private consumption, but private investment cycle is very strong. They are projecting about 11.1% for this year. Next year, about 8.9%. And in fact, I'm more bullish than them. I'm looking at medium term, private investment could be close to 10 to 11, 13% of 3 years horizon.
And you're talking about private investment, both from the perspective of foreign direct investment and also local.
Local,
Okay.
correct. I think for the first time, I'm more convinced that this time around we can get it right because of the All-Star Align. And I think not just the external factor that help us for this recovery and better number because of export coming, but I would like to caution everyone that I start to be worried about export now because September number was quite a big surprise to us. It's a minus. It's a decline, a small decline. Hope not it's because of the slower pickup in the E&E sector.
Could maybe some of the strikes that are happening in the ports in the US.
I mean, that's why we shouldn't be overconfident in some of the driver. But I believe that if we can get it, all the measures by the budget, if we can do it, execute it, I think the confidence is coming back. And if you ask me whether it's only the reason why we are better, partly we also have a low base last year. You know, GDP numbers. And so far,
we underperformed last year.
Underperformed, correct. First half of the year, we have 5.1%. I believe third quarter, fourth quarter, on average, we still can grow about 5.5, 5.6. Maybe my full year may not be 5.4, but it's still within the MOF, the 4.8 and 5.3%.
Yep. Yeah. So top end of 4, close to 5.
But the question is that I think we are on the right track. As economists, we also have to be balance out the risk. So whether the risk is more tilted to downside or balance. So I think the external risk, we still have to watch out what's outcome from US president election.
Correct.
Whether the Trump, the beast and versus the beauty. So I think that will have impact on in terms of tariff,
Sure.
war, and how would that
foreign direct investment.
Internally, I think that is the key. I mean, if you want if people feel confident, things are moving, you have to really deliver. And the other thing that I try to reconcile is that people have been asking me, headline numbers so strong, Hingjui, but why aren't we feeling the effect?
The positive
trickle-down
effect.
Correct. The trickle-down effect is still quite slow. I mean, cost of living rise is still high. Yeah, headline inflation is about 1.8, 1.9%. So what? But I'm still getting squeezed for my every ringgit I have. So this is on the ground, which I think is a challenge for the government. You know, how to, maybe the trickle-down effect could be slowly coming in. Hopefully by then they will feel better.
Yeah, I think next year, and we'll talk about it a little bit more later, with the projected rise in the wages of civil servants and also the increase in the minimum wage.
That will help a bit. But there will be also a negative factor coming from the rationalization of the RON 95.
So, good top-line numbers. I just want to go through some of the federal government revenue estimates because it is expected that corporate and individual income taxes will also increase. I think this is mostly because of the growing economy next year, but also projected that the SST will also, contributions will also increase. And I think this is partly because the government has said not just increasing the percentage from 6 to 8% last year, but also broadening the scope of goods. And this year, some of the non-food essentials, next year, some of the salmon, avocados, maybe there's more also.
There are more also, that's why.
So do you think that this is a sort of like a good measure in terms of trying to broaden the government's tax base?
I think government doesn't have, I don't know whether they have the courage to do the GST. Some argue because of timing, that is due to political reason. And for us, from a center or the chamber, we have been almost every year when we submitted our proposal to
advocate
government.
For the GST, more efficient, more
and it's supported by our chamber, during the survey. And in fact, not just us, FMM, even some of the economists, some of the NGO, even the tax expert, that is a better base. I mean, more effective, transparent. And the moment you are continue every year try to add more item into the service tax or even the sales tax, that will have immediate cascading effect on cost. So eventually, assuming one day you decided to come back to GST, and those rates are how are you going to align it back to what the low rate to start.
Especially if, let's say, you want your GST rate to start off as
Correct.
a lower rate,
Yes.
maybe at 5% rather than 8%.
Yes, so I think I would urge the government, you should seriously reconsider GST. Maybe Anwar was commenting that the annual income, the mean income level is still low, the wage is still low. We should wait for 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. It can never be the good level to start.
Okay.
You look at how India, Indonesia, a lot of countries, they also have low income. I think most important, you come out a mechanism to help those that you want to help. I mean, you can have GST, maybe neutral level is 4%, slightly 5%, people still feel better. I'm paying 8%, SST. And talking about what you mentioned about those, he widened the scope for sales tax and a non-essential item. Example, how much you can collect from all this? I know these are rich people but salmon, sometimes you once a month eat a bit also good for you, because it's a lot of good fats.
Avocado can be healthy.
Yes, healthy. That's why my wife also commented why they want to tax this out. Good food, healthy food. I believe until today, the budget I was looking for some guidance. What is the final decision on high value good tax? Almost a year, coming to a year. 1 year anniversary, but still nothing there. So I want to know whether it's still on or not on. So if I look at how he widened the service tax for sales tax, example, for all these non-essential item, so I believe the high value good tax, right, could be submerged under the possible, right? So we shall see. Because anyway, you look at the appendix, detailed budget tax, they have never listed down what are the items. So I think I'm positive. I'm happy that at least they say they will engage the industry. Anyway, the thing will only start May. So we shall see.
Yeah,
so hopefully.
Just to take the audience, to clarify to the audience, what Heng Jui was referring to is the fact that last year, government announced that there's going to be a high value good or luxury tax.
Correct.
And in fact, last year wasn't the first time it was announced. It was announced for the 2023 budget. But it was never implemented because I think there wasn't consensus in terms of what category of goods to start imposing these taxes. And I'll give you an example. People were saying, "Hey, you buy gold, that means you're very rich." So let's go and put this high value added high value good tax on gold. But suddenly the feedback came back to say that actually a lot of B40 people, they buy gold for weddings. As an investment,
correct,
like the Indian community, for example, right?
Yes.
Then suddenly, then the government start to think, hey, maybe not so good to go and put this in.
Like even talking about car, they were talking about maybe 200,000. Only apply for those non-EV. But you understand, EV car also can be pricey, Mercedes-Benz, the
i5,
BMW.
Your BMW.
Yes. So it's very hard to come out what is the right threshold and what are the items to be there. Unless it's just yacht or this private jet, very simple, people, everything.
Yeah, but that doesn't really raise that much.
But at least this widening SST, to me, is at least something they have to come out. I mean, they have to show something some revenue to meet for the expenditure. Because they are talking about operating expenditure around 98% of the ratio to revenue.
Yes.
So you have to work out something, but based on their projection, they are getting about 5 billion from SST. Whatever tax measure announced in the budget, net increase to the revenue is 4.4 billion, of which 5 billion coming from there. So the rest some are negative, like your
plus minus here and
plus minus your relief income.
Yeah, thanks. We will talk about that as well. So basically, an additional 5 billion from SST. Right. So we'll see what categories of goods fall into this. And again, going into some of the details a bit, I think one of the sectors that was hit last year was actually the logistics sector. Because previously they did not fall under this category of SST, but it was broadened.
I think they give exemption.
Yeah, but I think they will get hit sooner or later.
Okay.
Right. So exemption is just maybe for 1 or 2 years. Finally, I think they will also get hit, which perhaps strengthens your argument just now with regards to putting in a GST so that there can be claim back mechanisms. Right?
So Kemi, do you agree that GST should come back?
For me, I think that the e-invoicing process needs to be improved significantly.
Yes.
Because that is part and parcel of the jigsaw puzzle, whereby once you get the e-invoicing done, including among all the SMEs, right, the amount of leakages would decrease.
Correct. Yes.
And then it will also increase the speed at which customs in this case, can actually refund your GST.
Yeah, and they can see the real time.
Yes.
Right, the collection.
Yeah. So I think once the e-invoicing mechanism is put in place, then consideration for the GST should be higher.
Yeah, on the e-invoicing, I think for the SME, regardless of size, I think by July next year they will start.
Yes.
In fact, this budget they also give some
allowance.
Correct. So I think hopefully that will be a very smooth one. But so far we never.
Well, it won't be smooth, but hopefully it's smoother.
Yeah, but so far for big companies, they implemented. I didn't hear any.
For big companies, not an issue.
Right? They can
get the consultants in, get the
correct. The hawkers, those I think they will be quite anxiety lah. Don't know how.
For hawkers, they may not necessarily fall within the threshold lah, right? So, but for the other SMEs, maybe your
150,000, correct.
Yeah.
In fact, we chamber asked the government can consider to raise the threshold to 300,000 instead of 150. But the RHDN director say no, we are in line with the service tax threshold 150,000. Yeah.
So I think it's not necessarily a bad thing to get more people into the system so that you can prepare them for other eventualities. And even, getting maybe some of the micro or the small guys to pay GST may not be a bad thing if, let's say, there are refund mechanisms. Right. So this is part and parcel of the larger story. Okay. So maybe quickly go into the OPEX story.
Okay.
Since you talk about OPEX, for the benefit of our listeners, basically the government cannot borrow money to fund development, to fund operating expenditure.
Yes.
So your OPEX always has to be less than your government revenue, right? So that's why Hingui talked about how OPEX is about 98% of government revenue. The rest is all borrowing for development expenditure. So some of the interesting items in terms of increase in operating expenditure would be increase in emoluments, about 6 billion ringgit.
Correct.
Increase in retirement charges, about 6 billion ringgit for 2025. So total of 12 billion. And I think a lot of this has got to do with the salary revision of the salary scale.
7 to 15%.
Which I think would you say is probably fair, to increase the salary of our civil servants?
If they increase and we can see improvement in the productivity efficiency. So I'll be going to counter services and see whether they are effective. Maybe I can text to the minister. I mean, just joking, but I think it's important.
Yeah, and maybe more digitalization.
Correct. Yeah, all have to come together. Yeah, and then you look at the emolument numbers. I think because of the increase, we are record high. 105.9 billion. Big amount.
Yeah.
It's a big amount.
More than what we are spending on development expenditure, which is about 86 billion.
And I think maybe it's time government to look into really the word called right sizing.
Okay, that one always
quite
very sensitive
highly sensitive word. Yeah, but I think Anwar also mentioned, yes, this time around I'm giving a very decent increment, but I'll be very strict in terms of performance-driven assessment.
Yeah.
And whoever not performing, we are not going to give you increment. Hopefully that will be implemented. That's important. Just like what private sector doing, right? If you are not performing, I'm not giving you increment. Bonus also don't have.
Sure. So I'll cover that a bit when we talk about some of the institutional reforms and things like that. But yeah, the other area that I want to talk about is debt servicing. Debt servicing has increased to 16.3% of total government expenditure. So that comes in at about 55 billion ringgit. Some of this has got to do with funding of certain government projects, the MRT1, MRT2. Of course, some of these projects may be shifted more to a PPP model, which we will talk about later.
PFI, right?
PPP, PFI.
So to add on your debt service charges, if you look at the outstanding debt, even though every year since Madani coming into power, you can see the net borrowing is
the
lower,
budget deficit has gone
down. But then you have to look into outstanding stock because of whatever your borrowed before. So I think it's also quite a big number. For direct government, it's about 1.2 trillion. 63.1% of GDP, where you look at your public finance and Fiscal Responsibility Act, you want to control below 60% over the midterm. And the debt service charges in terms of the revenue, or OE, now it's a revenue, especially revenue, is about 16.1%. For every ringgit you collected, 16 cents go to service of that. So if you recall back what Prime Minister always reminded us the country is highly indebted.
Indebted,
1.5
yes.
trillion, 1.6 trillion. So a lot of things that we have to give and take in terms of managing the budget.
Yeah. So I think they've said the sweet spot is about 15% debt service ratio.
Yes, 12.5.
Yeah.
12.5.
12.5. Is it?
It should not exceed that. Yeah.
So we've exceeded that, and I think it probably will continue to increase, especially if, let's say, we are funding some of the debt obligations from infrastructure projects. So hopefully some of this can generate economic spillovers that can increase government revenue.
Yes.
But some of these projects have longer gestation periods.
Correct. So if we can grow the economy, people are making profit, you collected more revenue, then you have ability to service your debt.
Correct.
Assuming you are in those productive sector which can generate income, that will help.
Yep.
Yeah.
So when we talk about some of the development expenditure and investment projects later on, we'll bring out some of these examples. So I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room here in regards to the operating expenditure side.
Okay.
The fact that subsidies and social assistance is projected to decrease by about 9 billion from 2024 to 2025.
Sure.
From about 19% of total OPEX to about 16%. So a lot of this will be due to rationalization of
your
different subsidies.
Correct.
And the most important of which is petrol. Although there can be others as well.
Electricity retargeting. Chicken already floated, but maybe your cooking oil, even your sugar subsidy, even though they increased the sugar tax.
Yep.
So there could be other these are the items, big items.
Yep. So I'm going to zoom in and focus on the petrol subsidy. Because this one takes up the highest level. Although I think expenditure on petrol subsidies, because the oil price has stabilized a bit, not expected to be as high in 2024 compared to 2022 and 2023. But still, the Prime Minister has introduced this concept of T15. That will have to pay more for petrol, public healthcare, education, especially on the public education side. What do you make of this rationale of having this category of T15 rather than the category of T20 before? And from what I understood from some of the initial government announcements,
yes.
Rafizi and others were saying that they even wanted to get rid of these brackets.
That's why I was surprised they will still mention about T15. Suddenly come out T15 from slightly below T20.
Yes.
So all of us try to figure out what is T15, and I also try to check with my source what should be the defined
household
income. So let's say we revert back and go back to what the current definition of T20 . So based on the 2022, I think Dawson mean household data, it's around 19,250 for household. So if you work on that basis, maybe your T15 will be somewhere between the high
it will be higher.
Higher. So the question is, how are they going to come out this threshold? I mean, the threshold income. So are they going to go based on the PADU, or there will be other indicators which they will come in to compute?
This is where it becomes confusing because given the fact that the government has announced this T15 category and pertaining to petrol subsidies, the argument or the policy that the government wants to roll out is basically your 85% of the population will not be affected. That means they will continue to pay the same price. The T15 have to pay more. And indications are from Rafizi, and others in that ecosystem have said we want more than just household income to be measured. Things like maybe even some sort of a net income measurement.
Net disposable income after all your those your payments, your
different
debt
obligations.
Correct.
So what do you think about this approach?
So it's very difficult to get all this. You have too many indicators. I think you make your targeting more complex and hard to get the desired outcome. So I think you have to simplify. You cannot have too many things, and you may delay the whole thing again. I believe you see what happened to diesel.
Correct.
Right? I don't think they use the Padu. They just use whatever
They use the
existing
Budi,
whatever in the MOF data when they started will be all the Bantuan SARA Hidup cash aids during the.
In fact, they didn't even use STR. They used a new system where you had to apply because it was based on whether you had a diesel vehicle or not.
Correct.
And then their threshold for that was a household income of 100K.
100K, correct. And then they also do a weekly survey. I mean, how much your petrol for diesel that you travel from home to the workplace, and they work out this is much I can subsidize you.
Correct. Yeah, it's not a subsidy, full subsidy.
Not full subsidy lah.
Yeah.
I think it's important that government need to message to the user that we cannot fully subsidize. Even let's say we are going to gradually float the petrol prices. So whatever cash I give to you, the targeted group, you cannot expect to want to compensate that. To start to change your behavior as well. No.
Okay, so I agree with you, Heng Jui, that if you want to use other measurements of income, including things like net disposable income, where you have to subtract all these other expenditures, which again, data collection is a problem.
Correct, yeah.
It's going to be very difficult. If we want to use the Padu database, which collects over 60 parameters,
you cannot use all also.
You cannot use
come
all,
out,
and you don't know how accurate the information is because it's all self-declared.
Self-declared.
So that argument or that database, the applicability of it to this 85 versus 15 and all that, it still remains.
Unless PM can instruct some of the key agencies to provide the data, like related to cars, JPJ, EPF. I think once you have EPF information together with income tax revenue, that is good enough already.
Okay, so I again take you guys behind the curtain. If let's say this information is going to be used in ways that may deprive some EPF holders from getting certain government subsidies, right? My sense is that EPF will be very reluctant to share. Because by sharing this data, you're actually hurting the interests of your contributors, right?
Worry about privacy,
privacy is also one, but also the harm that it could possibly
do.
Even if let's say you are talking about people who can afford it, that is not necessarily in EPF's mandate to decide, right? So that is one big set of problems that we need to highlight here in terms of which database can actually be used. My recommendation would be just use the STR database, the Sumbangan Tunai Ramah database. That's the most complete. That's under MOF. So coming back to this issue of paying the so-called right amount, there are two approaches to this. One approach would be, okay, everyone continue to pay whatever it is that is the petrol price at the pump, 205.
Correct.
But if you're T15, then you have to pay more. Then the question becomes, how do you identify
T15?
Right?
The foreigner you can identify by showing IC.
Correct.
But T15...
If let's say, okay T15 by your LHDN tax payment, you are T15. So when you swipe your MyCard, you're not eligible. You have to pay the market price. What will happen, I think, in terms of leakages would be, if I'm a boss, I just ask my driver to pump it.
To pump,
right?
Correct.
So then all these leakages become very problematic. So that's one way of doing it.
Correct.
The other way would be, I'm going to float the price.
Yes.
The T15 have to pay the market price. That's the pump price. But for the 85%, you're going to be eligible for a discount. If I swipe my IC, I'm in 85. Then there will also be leakages, right?
Yeah. So
similar to what we talked about.
There's no what called the perfect mechanism to do this. In terms of administrative burden, I would prefer the second one, float. You can just the way you know the rich people to pump the whatever the market price. Those that you want to target, then you
find some way to compensate them. Right, pay maybe every month 100 ringgit through your STR or your SARA.
I think that would be the better way,
Yeah, but that would mean to come up with some sort of a system that is not as complicated as Padu.
Correct.
And you may have to admit that maybe Padu may not be so usable at this point in time, and then use another way, which is STR.
Actually, you look at Padu since they launched and until nowadays, it's a bit like quiet down, no update, no indication whether are we going to continue to use Padu, and so far whether I'm sure it's below the target, right? I don't think it's more than 50%. I don't know whether it's more.
It is more than 50% in terms of people who have registered, but in terms of the quality of the data, nobody knows.
Right?
Because
look back to all this targeting subsidy, diesel is a good example to learn. Now, when they launch the diesel subsidy, right? The floating, they originally have some target numbers that the motorists come to register the companies, but I think the actual number up to now is much lower. It could be maybe partly, since the diesel price floated, I think the price has come down due to the global oil price and stronger currency. So maybe less, but I think some may not dare to come forward because they could be don't want to declare. Whatever they have. So it may happen to Petrol also, no? So and then Petrol is wider user, and it's very important to get it right. I mean, communication, get the I don't expect 100% perfect, but you need to make sure it is smooth, because the impact could be bigger than what you...
it's definitely much bigger than
bigger, you know?
So in your best guesstimate, given the fact that this has been delayed quite long already, what are the chances that the petrol subsidy targeting in some shape or form will happen next year? Your best guess?
My best guess, in fact,
More than 50%, less than 50%?
More than 50, but if I were given a choice, I prefer to start in January. I don't know why you want to start in June.
Yeah, because you should have a mechanism thought out already.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
That's our proposal. I think January. What for start in June?
My best guess, because
less than 50.
I think there's no consensus in cabinet as to the process and also the mechanism. Likelihood of it being implemented by middle of next year is less than 50%.
Okay. We'll see who will make the right prediction.
So maybe just to wrap up this section, I think there are sort of other institutional reforms that the government has put in place in order to improve government performance and also try to save the government some money. So, this includes things like the Special Task Force for Reform, they call it STAR, to improve government efficiency. And also, under this effort, some level of consolidation of government agencies.
Good.
Right. So, for example, the Prime Minister has announced that the Halal Development Corporation and also Matrix will merge. Right, both agencies under MITI. Invest KL has already been absorbed into MIDA, and we see MAFCAP and also this Penjana has been merged under Khazanah. So some of these measures, I think, are good measures.
I agree with you. I think it's a very positive move. I think not just from the perspective of optimize the resources of the government, which is quite limited, and by removing all these what I call the duplication functions, at least you can cut down all the wastage, and that also help to build some fiscal buffer. More importantly, I think we want to make sure that they are really mean it. We have to really do it. Don't just on the...
Don't talk only.
I think private sector will feel appreciated with all this, because you help time saving resources, right? That will help the whole country, productivity, efficiency. I'm quite happy with this, with all the measures that mentioned in the budget about this institutional reform, how to rationalize the government agency, maybe including JLC, not just a step body. So I believe that there's a lot overlapping here and there. For example, like what you mentioned, overseas officers. Haven't we tried, maybe the ambassador of the office should be the one who help MIDA to promote, drive investment. There are some countries they do that, no?
That should be part and parcel of their mandate.
I think.
But I think in terms of that kind of consolidation, it's more to do with MIDA, Matrix, and MITI sharing one office.
Correct.
Especially in expensive locations.
Yes.
And then, another example would be the consolidation of MAVCOM and the Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia. That merger is happening right now.
In fact, inside the budget, I think he also mentioned about those counter services like Road Transport Department. They want to extend 1 more hour. So these are little thing, low-hanging fruits, which help Rakyat ease their in terms of doing all this efficiency.
And then maybe also, like what I said, some digitalization will also be helpful. And we'll come back to that in one of the later segments. So we spent quite a bit of time on this. We'll come back with the second section, shorter, where we'll talk about some of the progressive strategies in the budget 2025. Be right back. Welcome back to part 2 of this special edition of Are We OK?, where we are talking about budget 2025. And with me, special guest, Mr. Lee Hing Jui, the Executive Director of the Social Economic Research Center under ACCIM. the Chinese Chambers of Commerce and Industry in Malaysia. Now I want to move to some of the progressive policies that have been announced in the budget. And we all know that the origin of this fiscal transfers was called BRIM. Now is the latest iteration is Sumbangan Tunai Rama.
Betul.
And there's also this SARA payments on a monthly basis as well. So that has actually been increased, and the maximum that somebody can get in terms of household has been increased to 4,600.
Yes, correct.
Right. This is just for the B40.
B40.
We're not talking about the hardcore poor. The hardcore poor is another story. They have additional help from Jabatan Kebajikan Malaysia. So what do you think about some of these policies, progressive policies to help the
I think these are good. It continue to ease the pressure on the cost of living. In particular, like they introduce another hardcore, poor category, and the maximum amount that this year, next year will be higher than this year, and total allocation is about 13 billion, 3 billion extra compared to 10, but the recipient is still the same number, about 9 million. So I think this is on the right direction, but I think what we also want to know that how do we help these people to exit out of this dependency. We always say about dependency syndrome. I think we shouldn't be so proud that every year we still have about 9 million people continue to get all this bantuan. I think we also have to think hard. How do we want to help them? Like Chinese say, must give them a fishing rod, not just teach them how to fish, right? Not like every time you feed them, and then there's always this expectation. This coming budget I will get more and more. What if one fine day they say, I'm going to win off? How to win off all these people from here? I'm sure there are means, that's why we always say about whether do you need to tie with condition, instead of giving them outright cash. But I remember I discussed with some of the MOF. They say, you give them cash is easier because
cash is the
easiest ma. Then we also worried that they use the cash for not really just to spend out. Then at one time they wanted to say maybe cash don't give to the men household women. So all this we have to think going forward, the mean testing on to make sure that this money given out is being used in a more, I would say, that help you enhance your.
So I think one of the things that are good in this budget is this SARA assistance, SARA,
yes,
whereby starting from April 2025, these households will get 100 ringgit deposited directly in the my card of the head of household or whoever they choose, whether it's the husband or the wife. And it's 100 ringgit every month, and it's money that you can use to spend at the supermarket.
I think really help a lot those low income. I think as I mentioned, the goods are priced getting more and more expensive.
And this one, you know that if it's going to be goods spent. And money spent at the supermarket, they're not going to go out to use this money to buy other things, right? That may not be so healthy or beneficial to the family. So there's also other things like quite a lot of
relief,
tax reliefs for medical expenses, tax relief for disabled persons. I think those have been expanded, which I think is good. But to what extent do you think this can be felt in the wallet of some of these individuals? Because when you're talking about tax relief for medical expenses and things of that nature, right? It has to be big enough such that you are paying enough tax and also earning enough and spending enough on some of these medical expenses for you to really benefit, right? So the medical expense, the tax relief has been increased from 8 to 10,000 ringgit, right? But if let's say you are in the B40 community, you're not paying that much taxes, you're mostly going to the government hospitals and clinics, right?
But then you also, some people also buy private medical insurance.
Those would probably more be in maybe the M40 category.
Some B40 also. I mean, we also have one for insurance. What's that? Tenang.
Yes.
Tenang. So I think all this relief, right, to some people may be peanuts I am getting from government. Maybe the net saving is about 100, 200. To me, 100 and 200 is still good rather than you don't get anything from the government. So I think this is something, this time round they can't give you outright tax cut in the personal tax rate. And this relief, some of the relief that I hope they can do is a personal relief. In fact, we put in some of the personal relief can be raised, but it wasn't given. But I'm quite happy also because all these are quite relevant, as you mentioned, for elderly care, medical insurance. And you know that nowadays medical insurance is so expensive, and medical inflation is a big issue, big concern. In fact, we also put a proposal on medical inflation that can help to ease the medical expenses for those low and middle income. Yeah, there were some measures here and there, but in general, I'm quite happy with all this. Like what you mentioned, the bantuan and also the relief, I think that much we can expect from government, and in order, for them to strike a balance in terms of at least show a deficit reduction, at the same time have some allocation to sustain the momentum. Hopefully by then, when times are okay, they can give us back, like giving more tax reduction. Yeah.
So actually, just one short point to follow up on what you said just now. I think one of the things that the government probably can do better is to be more transparent in terms of who has actually benefited, meaning who makes the claims for these tax reliefs. How much do they benefit on a yearly basis?
To come more statistic to
okay.
To
show. Yeah, so that at least and it's not just the tax reliefs from the medical perspective. It's also to try to tie it in with other government related policies.
Okay.
So for example, Penang is an insurance scheme that basically the government subsidizes very heavily for the B40 community. But to the extent that the B40 community, when they buy these insurance, do they realize what they're buying? Because most of the time, it's done through agents.
Okay.
The agents will say, okay, this
is
is
government,
from
government.
Just
so
sign,
they sign.
and that's
it.
So they may not know that they are eligible to claim later on.
Yeah.
They may not. This may not be a very good way in terms of educating them on the values and the benefits of subscribing to insurance policies. And there may not be sort of like follow-up in terms of, if the government stopped this program, I won't continue to subscribe for insurance. That could potentially help me in times of emergencies.
Based on your suggestion, maybe they should have regular update.
Maybe even some communication in terms of how these have been used by certain individuals, so that to convince the larger public that this is actually something that is useful to them. Right.
Same thing happened to those allocation for ministry, for funds, for projects. I also appreciate all this regular update. At least
maybe some sort of outcome-based budgeting.
We don't have to wait for the AG to audit first. Only we know shortfall here and there. That's why you look at government expenditure in terms of DE. Since you bring up the point, you look at the government expenditure. Last budget is budget time is about 92 billion. So now revised estimate 86 billion. So he explained that maybe some less now because there's some repayment for the for loans, but it also reflects poorly that maybe because of the weak implementation, you can have big numbers budget, but your agency are not effective to execute. That could lead to shortfall, and you still can get your overall deficit look good, but at the expense of impact on the economy.
Yep. So since you bring up development expenditure, let's go to the third part, which is measures and also expenditure to stimulate increased economic activity and investments. I think one of the things that I look at from a development expenditure perspective, is looking at what are some of the potentially catalytic projects that could result in more value-added economic activity. Right. So an example would be, for example, the spending on the Penang LRT.
Yes.
Right, so that's much needed. I think that will also help in many areas. In terms of enhancing the value of properties, making it easier for people to move from in different parts of the island, and then later on to the mainland as well. And there could be other connectivity spillovers that it could have.
Correct.
Another one would be the Terengganu floating solar project. This is in Lake Kenyir. Right.
Green,
so
energy.
So this is not just a catalytic project for the renewable energy sector, but it can also be an iconic and also strategic project to align policies for other floating solars in water bodies. Right? Because right now, from what I understand, the policy framework hasn't really been finalized.
I see.
And then the third example I'll give is revitalization of the old Sultan Abdul Samad building and also Kakosa Sri Negara to revitalize it, to make it into a tourist attraction so that there can be more, I think, economic multiplier effects. Imagine if, let's say, the tourists go to Dataran Merdeka, then they go to this Sultan Abdul Samad building. There's F&B outlets and all that, museums, and then people go in, and then it will attract more people to go there
then
to spend money
more
and
activity.
things like that. Right. So I think these are good examples. Of course, not all of the development projects will have similar level of spillover. I think it's important to have some of these so that some of these more important catalytic projects can be highlighted.
And I also I noticed that this budget also he make it very detailed. Each state what a project related.
Well, not
it's
all.
very different. It's different from in the past all the budget content. And he keep on emphasizing no mega. But we know reading behind. I think mega could be part of the PFI. It could be the budget.
Yes, possibly.
I don't know. You maybe you know better about it. But I look at some of the list of the project. I tie up with the construction related and also investment related. There are some which I hope it can have more catalytic impact on the economy, like some you mentioned, but there are also quite a number which are related to, your infrastructure, your roads, highway. And there's one also I tried to figure out where he talked about GLC, those unused building, they want to turn into childcare center, right?
Yeah.
I don't know whether that is workable, or the unoccupied buildings are turned into a training center.
Yeah.
Another good, if you can centralize it.
I think that's part and parcel of that STAR reform.
Right?
Initiative. Right. So again, the proof is in the pudding, whether or not this can be implemented, and you probably need some iconic projects to get the public imagination to be evoked, so that more of these can be done. But since you talk about PFI, PPP, I think there could be a possibility that the MRT Line 3, the Circle Line,
it will be under that.
That could be a project under PPP. And of course, this is linked to the PPP Master Plan, or they call it PCAS 2030. That was relaunched or launched by the Prime Minister earlier this year to enhance and improve the PPP ecosystem, to make it more transparent, to make it more efficient, to make the projects more, I think, value for money.
So how you see the 120 billion, the domestic direct investment under the 6 GLC, which first year they're going to get 25 billion.
Yeah. So for PCAS, let me just finish off with PCAS first. For PCAS, you're basically looking to see how government can have policies that are more open, more aligned, and hopefully more transparent, whereby the government may come up with, let's say, only about 10 billion.
10 billion.
Right?
Facilitation.
And then, facilitation. And then the private sector comes up with, the rest of the 80 or 90%. But then the question is, who will eventually pay for it?
Yeah.
Right? If it's, let's say, the consumer, it has to be fair to the consumer, and the rate of returns cannot be must be fair to the private sector, but cannot be overly exorbitant.
Yes,
right. And this will apply to some of the toll concessions that we've seen in the past, right? So to what you said just now, this is specific to this program that I think was the brainchild of the second finance minister, Dato Sri Amir. This is the Gear Up program that incentivizes the GLCs, the GLICs actually, to spend up to 120 billion ringgit over the next 5 years to invest in strategic sectors of the economy. Right. So I think this is something that is good. It's not really something new in the policy ecosystem, but in the sense that it's already been announced this year.
Correct.
It will be it's new in the sense that it will be implemented next year. Right.
So for start 25 billion, of which I think Khazanah is going to give 1 billion for support the semiconductor. Is it?
There's quite a lot.
Quite a lot, right?
Khazanah for semiconductors, National Fund of Funds also under Khazanah.
Yes.
Dana Pemachu under KWAP, 6 billion. This mid-tier companies program under Khazanah 1 billion, Dana Perintis 1 billion under Co-op. So I think it's good to use the GRICs to spur this kind of investment opportunities.
DDI, correct.
Right. And also I think just also to highlight, there was an announcement in the budget that there will be a new National Investment Incentive Framework or NIF. This is under the purview of MITI and MIDA. And initially under the budget announcement, it was supposed to come up in September next year.
Correct.
But I read, and I think we both read,
early first quarter now.
That MITI will come out with this early next year, first quarter of next year. And I hope that this can be tied in to some of the details to do with the new industrial master plan.
Yes.
Including, this strategic co-investment fund and also the NIMP industrial development fund for smart factories and other strategic sectors.
So I think this new investment incentive framework, they also look into in terms of the net impact on the country. You know that when we attract all the FDI come in, we give a lot of incentive. Part of the relate to your global minimum tax. So when you come in, you have to set up some criteria. What are the things that you likely to bring benefit to the country in terms of income, in terms of jobs, skill. So I think we have to be more assertive nowadays. Make sure that we don't give more than
it's necessary.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's important, especially since we are sort of like in demand now.
Yes.
And many people want to come in to set up data centers, semiconductor factories and things like that. So, we don't have to resort to giving 15-year tax-free,
yes,
example. And that policy may not make that much sense given the fact that we have this global minimum tax commitment as well under OECD.
And then you can never compete with other countries. They can even give more, and then you continue to race to the bottom.
Yep.
So I think most important to get your business ecosystem right, conducive, stable policies are consistent, no flip-flop, continuity is there. So I believe the investor will find Malaysia is still a place to invest. That would help us to achieve our target. I mean, so far you look at the last 2 years. From 2021 until now, your approved investment numbers.
Yeah, it's
every year is good number. And Kian Ming, you're sitting on the MIDA board. I'm sure you scrutinize all these investment approval plans. So I think it's important to get it, or either the process of application approval had to further expedited. I think Prime Minister has always said we still need faster time to get it out. And I always think that the coordination, federal side and the state and the local government is important.
I think one good test would be after the details of the Johor Singapore Special Economic Zone are announced. They said they're going to set up some sort of a one-stop center.
Correct. Invest Malaysia Facilitation Center, Johor.
IMFC. And to see which agencies at the federal, state and local government levels are going to be put in there, and that can be sort of like a test case. I also want to ask you about your views from an incentive perspective for domestic investments. Because, we've all said this before. The government, MIDA, pays too much attention to the FDIs. Right? So do you think that there is enough in here for, for some of the DDI, the local players in terms of investment incentives?
I think take a look is okay. I'm okay with that. I think the one that I narrowed down is more of the 40 billion, the financing facility, including guarantee.
Yeah, the SGPP.
That is very good. And then they even publish down all the banks, what they offer, the term and condition. But I think importantly is to get the process of approvals and loan disbursement fast. I mean, that matters. And if you look at all the KL20 startups, some of the initiative mentioned here, including your NIMP, even your new investment framework, I believe there will also be
incentives for the domestic sector.
I think they got the message already.
Sure.
And I always continuously
remind
them. And also there are assurance from the Tengku Zafro that DDI will be part of the whole investment framework.
Maybe have more incentives for JVs between foreign and local players.
That's right. I think that's important because we also want to be part of the supply chain.
Correct.
Right.
So maybe on this part, we end on the something that's I'm still trying to gauge the reaction from industry. Government announced that likely in 2026, not 2025, carbon tax would be implemented on the iron and steel sector and perhaps the energy sector as well. Right. So from the perspective of industry, What do you think is the reaction?
What we hope the carbon tax coming out, right, start with a low rate to increase the awareness. That is important. I think there's a lot of anxiety among the hard-to-abate industry like your iron and steel. Don't know how to start and whether how would that impact on their costs again, right? And the banks, they also hope that when they do this transition, the banker will come in to help them. So I hope the MITI committee, which Kian Ming, you're inside, headed by CEO of the HSBC.
Yes, Dato' Omar
So there's a
Siddiq.
lot of anxiety, hoping that this committee will come out something to help them, to hand-holding them the journey towards the decarbonization of the iron and steel industry. Because I also did some report for the MISIF, and from there, one of the concerns they have is about how the government will help them in terms of capital, resources, technical support, knowledge, to decarbonize the industry. If they look at how China, they have a lot of support from the government there, and they have a big scale, large scale, and then most of the excess capacity is flooding into here. And here, we are talking about decarbonization, but at the same time, our capacity utilization is still very low. We have not seen a significant pickup. So this is the concern.
Yeah.
These are the concerns.
So maybe to take our listeners just a little bit behind the curtain, what Heng Jui was talking about just now is the establishment of an independent steel committee by MITI, headed by Dato' Omar Siddiq, who is the CEO of HSBC. I'm also part of that committee as a member. There are other members as well, to write a paper, present a paper, prepare a paper, policy recommendation paper to give to MITI with regards to the future of the iron and steel sector. So, the report is almost done already, and we're going to submit it to MITI soon. And I think one of the things that we are thinking about with regards to the iron and steel sector for carbon tax is that this can be used as a leading industry, whereby there are more players in there who think they can be prepared for this, especially since there's this thing called the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism tax that will be implemented by the EU, including on the iron and steel sector starting in 2025. Right. So why not get ahead of the curve? Try this out first, try to align with some of these global standards. And maybe it may not come in the form of a carbon tax. It may come in the form of a emissions trading scheme, a cap and trade scheme, whereby you set some sort of a limit. Those who pollute over that limit will have to pay, and buy credits. And then those who are below, they would be able to enjoy certain credits. So it's not everyone hit at the same level, but more to do with the, more heavily polluting players.
So would industry will be engaged before you come out that guideline, or already engaged? They already engaged.
No, I think on the part of the Independent Steel Committee, we are just going to make our proposals and recommendations. And then it's up to MITI together with the stakeholders and also MOF and the Ministry of Natural Resources, Ministry of Environment and Sustainability to come up with that framework.
I see.
But I think I'm very glad, that MITI has taken a lead on this, because one of the missions of NIMP, the New Industrial Master Plan, is net zero. And the iron and steel sector is one of the most polluting in
very hard to abate, correct.
Right. So, I'm glad that some of these measures are there in the budget to point a certain direction from a
get us prepared for this.
And also from a policy standpoint. Right. So, so we've finished two sections very quickly, in terms of the progressive policies and also some of the policies to do with investments and also economic activity, green transition and things like that. So we'll come back and talk about impact on businesses, both large and small. Be right back. We are back in this final segment of the Are We OK podcast with our special guest, Mr. Lee Heng Jui. We're going to talk about the impact on businesses, both large and also small and medium. And I want to highlight a few things just to get your response. The increase in the minimum wage from 1,500 to 1,700, was this within your expectations? Or industry expectations?
Within our expectation. I think we were a bit worried that they will raise up to 2,000 or even 1,800 and above. But I think 1,700 to us is about reasonable. Inevitable they will increase the cost of doing business. I think as long you improve your productivity, that would help a bit. I think it's time to review. Anyway, it's every 2 years.
Sure.
So as long as it's not steep, I think the SME are able to absorb that.
So on this front, right? Let's say 1,700.
Correct.
I would say in the Klang Valley, in Penang, in Johor, most entry-level jobs,
It's
it's already more than that. Even
You're right.
if, let's say, you're talking about manual
Small.
workers and whatnot.
Right.
lah.
Yeah.
Right. But
Yeah.
it's the SMEs that are, let's say, in some of
The
smaller towns,
Yes.
maybe in Perak, in
Right,
Sabah,
right.
Sarawak.
Correct.
You know, do you think that would be
Burden.
more of a concern, burden for
Yes, agree. I think in fact, we wanted the government to look into whether should we have a different minimum wage by states or by district. So we put up a proposal to the government recently. So we should start to consider that in terms of cost of living, demographic, or even some of the to assess.
I'm not sure whether you remember this, Jui, but when Lim Guan Hing was the finance minister, and during PH 1.0,
correct.
the increase in the minimum wage that was proposed at that time, right, I think to about 1,002 or 1,003.
Yes.
They differentiated between those that are in the cities versus
I remember.
the sort of like the smaller PBTs lah.
The municipal council district
municipal councils, right?
Then
So
later they collapse into.
Yeah, but I think the problem is implementation. Right?
But then other country like Indonesia also, they have different district region, and also meet some on advanced country lah. But what I hope that the tripartite committee,
national wages,
national wages,
council,
maybe take some time to look into this and study. Don't rush to do it lah. Yeah, consider all this aspect, and maybe that would be the better way, because, for example, you're in very poor states, and you set the 1,007, definitely they cannot afford to pay. Maybe your minimum wage lower, it may attract investment into the states.
Maybe like in Kelantan, for example.
Yes, I think we should think about that.
Okay, interesting policy proposal.
Yeah.
Maybe by state rather than by
just
level
a
of
uniform.
urbanization.
Yeah. I think Sarawak, definitely, I think they will be complaining. 1,007 they can afford.
Yes, Sabah, Sarawak, the
Yes.
SMEs. Yeah, and probably what will happen is that the level of compliance will be lower in those places. Yeah, because there's a lot of people who may not even be put on the formal payroll.
Yeah,
right?
I think the reaction from the SME, Samantha, you can see headlines today. Everything. I mean, that will lead to more unemployment. But I also do a quick check during the years that we raise our minimum wage. Whether 100 or
actually unemployment didn't go up.
Yes, that's why all these are shown in my for you who want to follow my assessment of the budget measure, you can go to our website to download, and I put a chart there to show. In fact, it doesn't go up. It doesn't lead to what people claim lah. And there's a whole study like US study that in fact it's a reverse. When you raise the minimum wage, right?
In some cases, employment does go up. Yeah, in quite unique
because
situations.
You have better wages, and you have less labor turnover. The company save on retraining again. So that is a reverse. No, it's not what the intuitively raise wages and employment go up, unemployment go up.
Yeah, I think the larger question would be, the impact on the profitability and financial sustainability on the SMEs. Okay, so still acceptable. I think the 200 ringgit increase in the minimum wage. How about the proposal to introduce the multi-tiered levy for foreign workers?
Okay, this is something that we have been waiting for long, because we also know that they touch on in the 12 Malaysia plan, and we are just waiting for when are they going to introduce. And in fact, our members also involved in the committee lah.
Yep.
So they never announced a new level, but more or less most industry know what's the likely quantum. But our stand to the government is that not too steep for the SME to start with. In fact, we asked the government, can you consider to let the SME 2 years waiting period? I mean, let the big company do first, and then they'll come in 2 years later.
That will make sense.
That makes sense, right? So I think, unfortunately, it's not mentioned in the budget. Maybe they still need to. It was mentioned early next year they will start, but they never announced the level, the levy. Sorry.
So actually, for this multi-tiered levy, right, I've been involved in some of these discussions when I was deputy minister. The idea then was to separate it out by sector.
Yes.
And then within each sector, they calculate this thing called the percentage between foreign and local. Right? So the higher the percentage of foreign, the higher levy will be charged. Some people have told me that this kind of formula may not make much sense, because for SMEs, sometimes you can be employing like 10 Malaysians and then maybe 20 foreign workers. And
so
then
your ratio
is skewed. And you're a small player, so you'll be unfairly penalized. So some people,
Suggest.
including YB Liu Chin Tong, Deputy Minister for
Yes.
BP now, has suggested that instead of tiering by the ratio, why not tier by the total number of workers? So if let's say the total number of your foreign workers is less than, let's say, 50, right? Then your rate would be at the lowest, right? And then if let's say it's from 50 to 500, then it will be in the mid tier. And if you employ more than 500, it will be at the top tier, right? So and the way in which you can sort of like convince the big players that this may be more acceptable to them would be, okay, you get charged a higher fee, but we're going to be more open about the quotas that you're going to get. Because right now, the quota is ding dong, up and down, right? So as long as you're willing to pay, we're going to give you that kind of allocation. Do you think that would be something that's acceptable
I think most our members, they prefer the ratio rather than numbers.
Okay.
And they say if you were to implement the multi-tier, the current ratio 80 to 20, which will extended until end of this year, that had to be removed.
Yes.
Because it's meaningless really.
Yes, correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think they still prefer the ratio rather than
So
numbers.
just to let the audience know, what Injury means is that the ratio, including 80-20, was the rule that you could have... they tried to limit the number of foreign workers to actually 20% of the workforce in a particular company. But for many of the manufacturers, this actually doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense, right.
Especially for the larger scale ones, including the semiconductor, glove, and plantation sector, for example. Right. So when the multi-tiered levy comes, if you still maintain the ratio level, what it means is that if let's say your ratio goes like 50-50 between local and foreign, then you'll be charged a certain rate. If you go even higher, let's say 70% or 80% of your workers are foreign, 20% are local, then you'll be charged at a much higher rate. Right. So this is something that I think industry and government will have to discuss in more detail, because no matter which formula you use, there'll be somebody that will be unhappy.
Of course.
Whether it's the big guys, whether it's the small guys.
Can never be happy. So I think ultimately, I think industry support the government move to reduce over dependency on foreign worker below 15% of total employment. That ratio is still stand. I think we definitely support that, but also give us time to comply. Not me, I mean the SME.
Yes.
The ideal, I mean, they always
even the large companies, they also need a bit of time to comply.
And some sectors, right, you really cannot do without foreign workers because the locals are shunning the jobs and 3D. I don't know.
Or maybe
is it due to wages?
Yeah, well,
some people argue.
Many of them who are in Johor go to Singapore to work for a higher wage, right? So it's a complicated issue.
Very complicated. I think these foreign worker issues have been there for how many years? Long time.
Yeah.
Change minister also the same thing, but finally they get it out. Hopefully, multi-tier levy. There's no full stop to that. I don't know.
We'll see. We'll see.
Because you're coming together with minimum wage, multi-tier, and the contribution to EPF for foreign workers.
So multi-tier, I think we wait and see to see whether it can be implemented, especially the details, some of the policy discussions that we highlighted just now. This is the third point that I want to bring up. The introduction for EPF compulsory for foreign workers.
Non-citizen,
non-citizens, yes. So this would have a very big impact on companies that hire a lot of foreign workers, right? So what is your take, from an industry perspective?
It's a big negative surprise to us. First of all, everyone is in the dark. They will not engage at all with the industry, the chamber, even with the MEF that I checked with. So I think when this
MEF is the Malaysian
employer, yeah. So when they announce it, everybody, what is this? Why? Everyone asking why we have to contribute. Ask the employer to contribute for the foreign workers.
Because this would mean another 13%, for example.
Yes. Yeah. For new contract is 13%, either 12 or 13% depends on your wage. Like what we are. And the employee itself have to contribute 11%. If the existing worker, they give you 6 years to normalize it, 2% each. Yeah. So then we work out, you have three things, triple whammy. You have minimum wage, multi-tier levy, and the EPF. So I do a simple simulation, assuming that now you're paying a new minimum wage of 1,007. You have Peso, EPF, the levy. So easily your cost to hire one foreign worker is about 454 ringgit per month extra. Assuming you pay 2% one for EPF, that's about 266 ringgit per month. That's huge, you know. You go by
and if you have thousands of
multiply
workers.
yes.
Yeah.
So I think hopefully we think the government have to really engage us again and discuss about how best to do this. And we wonder why you want to contribute, why the foreigner to contribute EPF. In fact, they are not going to stay for long. Anyway, the money will be repatriated back. And as a foreigner, now I have to pay the EPF, I don't deduct for whatever the cost. The net home pay is so low, and the reason they come here is to take money back home.
Yes.
So they may not be. Why should I come here?
So the sort of like retirement rationale for
it's not there.
workers is not there for foreign workers, right?
Doesn't hold.
The only other reason that I can think of is maybe the EPF funds have been depleted a little bit because of withdrawal during COVID, and this is one way to replenish the coffers.
Quite big,
of
no?
EPF.
Quite potential is quite big.
Yes,
You,
yes.
1,007 times employer and employee 11 plus 13, 24. And times 12 and the amount of foreign worker, you take a simple average 2 million, 2.2 is a big amount, no?
Yes.
Suddenly a pool of funds. And that would put more pressure on EPF to manage the bigger funds. Because already they always say, it's hard to generate the type of dividend for our contributors. And why add on to the pressure for EPF? And the other point is that, when you look at this contribution, whether we are, if you argue from the viewpoint that we want to make sure that we take care of the welfare of the foreign workers, we have to comply with the International Labour Organization. Existingly, they are in the PACESO. They're also under the medical insurance, hospitalization.
and all that, yes.
Yeah. So I don't think we are also equally.
I don't think.
I don't
the argument for us being responsible for the retirement welfare of foreign workers, I think it's not there.
Not there. Not there. The other point I want to bring is that whether the government intention is to make the cost of hiring expensive for foreign worker because you have minimum levy, so that make you to consider local
workers more.
But some of the jobs locals are not interested to take, so you may backfire.
No, I would even say, let's say for the expatriate community, they may not want to have the EPF as well. Yeah, because they and in fact, if you think about it, just to draw a comparison with our neighbours down south, they have actually made it compulsory for non-citizens and PRs to withdraw their EPF.
Even Singapore, I checked, you only contribute to CPF if you are a PR.
Yes, correct.
Right?
PR and citizens.
PR and citizens. So of course there are some countries they do the government do contribute for them. Some of the ASEAN country, I think OECD about 38 country. In a different form, because social assistance or pension, So it may not, whatever other country do may not be applicable in the case.
And also I think the argument in Singapore and may apply to Malaysia is that sometimes you are giving certain dividends to CPF, certain benefits to CPF holders.
Correct.
That you only want to give to long-term residents in the country.
Yes.
Right. So, for example, our EPF returns are guaranteed at minimum of 2.5%.
Yes.
And usually it's 5-6% over and above what you will get from
the statutory, the 2.5 lah.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And also
FD.
from FD.
FD, correct.
Right. So
Fixed
why do we necessarily want to give out this kind of benefit to others that may not be long-term residents of the country? I think that is the rationale.
So I think government have to come clean. I mean, very clear on this lah.
And it's not clear, right?
Not clear. It just touch. We only get the detail from the touch point of the budget, but the speech, just a 2-3 line talking about we cadangkan for the compulsory
contribution. So it's a suggestion lah.
Suggestion.
Not 100%.
So there's, I think,
implemented.
definitely engagement have to come in between the industry and the government.
Okay, so another issue that maybe would be of interest to business owners, whether it's large or small, would be the additional 2% tax for dividends that are issued by companies that you collect, above 100.
For individual lah.
For individuals. Yes.
Doesn't apply to company.
So this does not apply to EPF and
unit
the other
trust
unit
or
trusts or GRICs, only to individuals.
Individuals.
So some people have
Listed
told
and
me,
non-listed, I think.
yeah. So some people have told me that, many Sendirian Berhad owners don't give themselves a monthly salary.
They depends on their dividend
dividends, right? So if let's say you charge this, then you may decrease the incentive for these shareholders to invest in the company and to declare dividends.
Correct.
Right? So
the share buyback lah. They will do share buyback.
So what do you think is the rationale for having this
I think
tax?
part of the revenue enhancement
Okay.
that related to what we call widening of SST, or there's another, the rich, ultra rich can
ultra
afford
rich
to
lah.
pay and pay and then help the country to distribute income to the poor, the Robin Hood tax.
No,
So
because
I think ultimately, to me, everything can be solved by doing a transparent, efficient, managed GST. That's my wish list.
correct.
The rest all can just put aside, because the implication from there, it's not just about 2%. What if down the road you may raise to 4%? And you also wanted to make sure that reward people who have work, entrepreneurs, startups,
build up their companies.
build up companies, and you're talking about on the FTZ from the Forest City, you have a family office, you give them 0 tax rate, and then on one hand you're doing this.
A bit inconsistent, right?
Be consistent. Of course, there is a special exemption. You're under Pulau, So people are thinking, hey, last year budget, you have tax on the unlisted share. Now it's income tax on dividend. What's next to come? It could be later widened.
Tax on listed shares.
Can be. It could be like wealth tax, inheritance tax. Before the budget already, people rumors that every year people are waiting. Hey, what next that would impact on the capital income? So there are a lot of arguments saying, why not? Why not we tax on capital income? What effort you already tax me? Could be a double taxation, and even like even that shareholder, just how you mentioned, they worry that they will fall back on them more, so they change their dividend policy. They may have lower dividend. It also impact people like minority shareholder, because some of the retiree maybe invest some share. Get some dividend income to spend.
Yes.
So there's an effect,
Other unintended consequences that the government
and also
may not
like
have thought of,
investors say, I will invest in foreign company share rather than Malaysian share. So they will start to look at, Singapore don't have, Hong Kong don't have, why Malaysia?
And don't you think that this may also incentivize certain people
They will
by putting their
more money.
They will put their share ownership under nominees.
Correct.
They will put it under different kind of structures such that
Holding
they can,
company, they'll be creative. How tax planning will advise them how to pay less.
Yeah. So your rationale or your reason for wanting to do this to increase your tax base, increase your revenue.
Question is how much they can collect.
Correct.
We want to know also from Ministry of Finance, but it was not mentioned in the estimated budget. The measures,
Budget
how much they can.
estimates,
Yeah, there's no mention.
The
Just
federal
like your
revenue.
tax on the non-listed share, how much they collected.
Probably not a lot lah.
Yeah, even like you do high value tax, I also don't know how much of net addition to your tax.
Yeah,
A
and
lot
in
of
fact,
cost
suddenly
administration.
the message that you send would be one that is not so positive for entrepreneurs. Okay, a few others. Impact on business and SMEs, assistance from different kinds of business loan facilitation
a lot.
from BSN and BNM, microcredit schemes from Tekun and all that. Do you find that these schemes actually flow down to the people on the ground, the SMEs and all
on
that?
this point, I think to fall back, just now you mentioned about that those personal relief, those who benefit, they should have more regular update. Same thing for all this fund. I remember during the during
During
Tengku
COVID
Zafro COVID time. So I think
Laksana,
he was quite good to
he had
update us.
reports, regular reports.
So I
and all
would
that.
expect this type of thing come out. So in terms of utilization rate, I think there's few funds that under Bank Negara which wasn't that good. I think I remember the Deputy Governor. I think last few months he mentioned that we had
And
to
then some
review.
actually oversubscribed, run out very quickly.
Yeah, so I had to review how effective they are. I think the process of getting the application, the loan approved, that had to be simplified. As you know, like SME, they may not have a proper, set of document. So you simplify it and quickly approve and disperse. That will be helpful to them. I think all this fund, SME forever, they will say lack of financing, tedious approval process, application is not so easy. So I think as a chamber, as a SME association, they have to help them to increase the awareness. Go for all these things.
Sure.
So I would think, read whatever coming up from budget and find out more, and then you will not say government is not helping you.
Yeah, maybe we have more briefing sessions.
More
to
briefing.
can help
I think
them,
it's good that the next podcast you should call in some of the
work in progress.
Huh?
Work in progress.
Work in progress.
Samantha and a few
yes,
others.
yes. That would be good.
Okay, last one. Wish list. You obviously highlighted your preference.
It's a
to want to
GST.
have a GST.
GST.
Anything else?
If you base on our proposal submit to the government and I do a quick audit check, I think 9 our proposal were included lah. Partial and some are full. I think quite good lah to me.
I think you mentioned the tax relief for home buyers.
Home buyer, correct. But the amount lower lah. I think we asked for 12,000. They only give up to 7,000. I think some of the related to the solar. NEM, we asked for extension. Energy, like minimum wage, and the only thing that I feel lack of is the detailed plan. I always say this every year. I think government need to really seriously look into how to enhance revenue base. So I think what they can do is they just do little bit by little bit. Hopefully, when they are ready to roll out the GST, hopefully maybe after the next election, I just prediction lah. So then they will be more confident to do it lah.
Yeah, okay. So for me, I think this is a very sensible, but also I think a very non-creative or innovative budget, if I would put it that way. So it's sensible because there's a lot of continuity, progressive policies being put in. But I think it's not creative or bold enough. And I highlight 3 examples of areas where I thought the government could have done more. Firstly, there's not been anything done with regards to paddy subsidy rationalization. So for those of you who may not know, the Ministry of Agriculture spends somewhere in between 2 to 3 billion ringgit on different types of paddy-related subsidies. You're talking about fertilizer, you're talking about benih, you're talking about different support systems. And there's always complaints about a lack of transparency in this area. There have been think tanks, including the World Bank, that have come out with reports on how to improve this paddy subsidy. So that's one, one area that can show the creativity of the government. Second thing is, I think I've been speaking about this in other arenas as well, which is a better and more comprehensive rollout of the National Digital ID. This can actually be a game changer in terms of eKYC processes. And we've covered this in a previous podcast, talking about how the government tried to force people to perhaps use the National Digital ID to sign onto the JPJ app without making sure that the National Digital ID is robust enough. Right. So this, if the government wants to do this well, including getting LHDN, JPJ, and other government agencies involved, it has got to be done in a more systematic and well thought out manner. And then the third one, this is on institutional reform. Hingui, I'm not sure whether you've heard of the proposal for the government to introduce a Government Procurement Act. I think it is not something that was highlighted by the Prime Minister, as far as I understand. And if it's in there, I think it's good. Then I will take back my word.
I think it was mentioned that.
But I think the government has focused much more on the Fiscal Responsibility Act.
The GPA, you talk about the Government Procurement Act.
It complements the Fiscal Responsibility Act.
Agree. I also been pushing that hard.
And
I think this time I saw it.
And I think for those of you who may not know, the Fiscal Responsibility Act was actually introduced under a previous government. It was done during Muhyiddin and also Ismail Sabri's time when Tunku Zafrul was the finance minister. So from an institutional sort of like improvement perspective, it would have been good for this Madani government to show their own impetus and also their own commitment to greater fiscal transparency. And the Government Procurement Act would have been something, or is something, that I think should and can be considered.
It's under the combating corruption. They're going to table freedom of information and government procurement bills.
So hopefully that can be implemented next year.
It has a long overdue also. They've been delaying that.
Correct. I'm sure that there are more things that I will discover as I delve into the budget a bit more. But those are my 3 wish lists. And hope that you guys have enjoyed this discussion. Anything else that you want to add, Hing-Jui?
I think I want to add one more is the medical inflation. I think we will propose some measures. I think I want that to consider, in terms of, you look at Singapore, right, they do some more transparent publication about all the critical illness comparison price. And I know a lot of friends who cut down their medical insurance premiums. Every year is higher and higher. But recently Bank Negara proposed something like co-sharing, right, the insurance. So I hope that they pay more attention to this medical inflation, which has been rising by 12.6% per annum. In the past, it could be 10 to 12%. So this is something will help a lot of the middle income, and low income.
So on this note, I have a little bit of memory on this from the Singapore side, because I was studying there at this point at that time. This policy was introduced by Goh Chok Tong when he was Prime Minister, if I'm not mistaken, to introduce something called MediSave and MediShield.
Yes,
basically savings that are taken out from your salary contribution that can go into medical expenses later on in life. We don't have anything like this. And that's equivalent to some sort of a national health insurance scheme where you contribute to, but it's run by the government, right? For Malaysia, this will evoke discussions on One Malaysia healthcare and things like that, which we as PH or Pakatan Rakyat at that time objected to. And I think it may be a good time to raise up this possible area of
maybe your universal healthcare fund, which was also mentioned in the white paper when they tabled the white paper on medical and healthcare.
And this was this was the work done partly from Dr. Zul's time, first time as health minister, and then later refined by Khairi. Now it has it's on the table through the former health minister. So something to consider, food for thought. Hope you guys haven't found this too intense. Just wanted to put more substance rather than talking about the budget in generalities. So we hope to welcome Peter back onto the show next week. We'll also probably have a special guest next week to talk about another issue that has got to do more with politics rather than economics. So watch this space. Thanks for your support. Smash that subscribe button and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.